Dallas Cowboys find themselves once again at the center of trade discussions. And this time the conversation is heating up around potential moves that could reshape key areas of the roster. As the offseason progresses and teams evaluate their needs, the Cowboys are being linked to several defensive players who could immediately improve the team, especially in areas that showed inconsistency last season. The big question surrounding the team right now is not just who they could trade for, but whether they should actually make a move or instead focus on building through the draft and developing the players already on the roster. This is always a complicated decision because trades can accelerate a team's competitiveness, but they can also cost valuable draft capital that might be needed for long-term success. One of the most talked about ideas involves the possibility of trading for an edge rusher, a position that is always in high demand across the league. Adding pressure on the quarterback is one of the fastest ways to improve a defense, and the Cowboys already understand how important that is. The proposed trade scenario would involve draft pick swaps along with additional selections, which makes the value discussion extremely important. When teams evaluate trades like this, they do not just look at the player's talent, but also contracts, age, recent performance, and how the player fits into the defensive system. A player coming off a strong season may demand a new contract, and that changes the entire value of the trade because now the team is not only trading picks, but also committing significant salary cap space. That is where the debate really begins. On one hand, acquiring a proven pass rusher can immediately elevate the defense and make the team more competitive in big games. On the other hand, if that player is looking for a massive contract extension, the Cowboys have to consider whether that money would be better spent on extending their own core players. Salary cap management is just as important as talent acquisition in the modern league, and teams that ignore that balance often run into problems within a few seasons. So even if the player is talented, the financial side of the deal could ultimately determine whether the move makes sense or not. Another trade idea that has generated a lot of discussion involves the linebacker position, which is an area where the Cowboys could definitely use more stability. A strong linebacker in the middle of the defense can change everything from run defense to pass coverage and even leadership on the field. In this scenario, the Cowboys would move down slightly in the first round of the draft while acquiring a proven linebacker who could start immediately. This type of trade is often seen as a balanced move because the team still keeps a first-round pick, just at a slightly lower position, while also filling an immediate need with an experienced player. Moves like this are often viewed more favorably because they help both the present and the future at the same time. The value of a linebacker in a trade is always an interesting discussion because the position does not always carry the same price as quarterbacks, pass rushers, or wide receivers. However, for a team that desperately needs consistency at that position, the value can be much higher internally than it might appear on paper. If the Cowboys believe a certain linebacker can become the leader of the defense and stabilize the middle of the field for several seasons, then giving up some draft position might be a price worth paying. The key question becomes whether the player is just a solid starter or someone who can truly transform the defense. There is also another trade scenario being discussed involving pass rushers from another team, and this one is a bit more complicated because it involves future draft picks and players with different contract situations. Some players are more affordable but may soon need new contracts, while others are already locked into team-friendly deals but may have different production levels. Evaluating these players is not just about sacks or statistics, but also about consistency, injury history, and how they perform in important games. Teams often look beyond the numbers and study how a player wins matchups, how often they pressure the quarterback, and whether they can perform against top offensive lines. Timing is another major factor in all of these trade discussions. Making a trade before the draft can sometimes be risky because a team does not yet know which players will be available when their pick comes up. There is always the possibility that a highly rated player unexpectedly falls in the draft. And if a team has already traded away their pick, they could miss the opportunity to select a player who might become a star. That is why some teams prefer to wait until draft night to make trades, because they have a clearer picture of what players are available and what their options really are. The Cowboys are in a position where they need to balance immediate competitiveness with long-term roster building. The team has talent, but there are still areas that need improvement if they want to truly compete at the highest level. Trades can be exciting and can quickly improve certain positions, but they also come with risks, especially when high draft picks are involved. Every decision made during the offseason can impact the team for several years, not just the upcoming season, which is why these discussions are so important and why fans continue to debate which direction the team should take. As the trade conversations continue to evolve, another name that keeps resurfacing in discussions is tied to a more aggressive type of move, one that would require not just confidence, but a willingness to take a major risk. This kind of scenario usually involves giving up premium draft capital in exchange for a player who has already proven to be among the most impactful at his position. While the idea of adding that level of talent is always tempting, it also forces the Cowboys to think carefully about how much they are willing to sacrifice for one single piece, no matter how dominant that player might be on the field. These types of blockbuster considerations tend to divide opinions because they represent two completely different philosophies of team building. One side believes that acquiring elite talent is the fastest way to elevate a roster, especially if the team feels it is close to contending. The other side argues that depth and flexibility are just as important and that giving up multiple high-value picks could create more problems than solutions over time. For the Cowboys, this debate becomes even more intense because expectations are always high, and every move is scrutinized through the lens of whether it brings the team closer to a championship. Another layer to this situation is how the market itself shifts based on previous trades around the league. When one team decides not to move forward with a deal, it can influence how other teams value similar players. If a potential trade falls apart, it often signals that the asking price was too high, which can lead other teams to hesitate before making similar offers. This ripple effect can reshape negotiations entirely, forcing teams like the Cowboys to reconsider whether they are willing to meet demands that might no longer align with the perceived market value. At the same time, internal development cannot be ignored in these conversations. The Cowboys have young players who are still growing into their roles, and the coaching staff may believe that improvement from within could address some of the team's weaknesses without the need for major trades. This approach requires patience, but it can pay off if those players take the expected leap in performance. However, patience is not always easy when the pressure to win is constant, and that tension often pushes teams to explore external options more aggressively. There is also the strategic element of keeping future flexibility intact. Draft picks are not just opportunities to add talent. They are also valuable assets that can be used in future trades. Once those picks are gone, the team loses a degree of control over how it can adapt to unexpected situations down the line. Injuries, breakout performances, and changes in the competitive landscape can all alter a team's needs very quickly, and having draft capital available provides options that might not exist otherwise. This is why front offices often hesitate to part with first-round selections unless they are absolutely certain about the return. Another important factor is how a new player would fit into the existing locker room and system. Talent alone does not guarantee success, especially in a sport where chemistry and communication play such a significant role. The Cowboys would need to evaluate not only what a player brings on the field, but also how he integrates with the team's culture and leadership structure. A strong fit can elevate the entire unit, while a poor fit can create challenges that extend beyond performance. As these discussions continue, it becomes clear that every potential move carries its own set of risks and rewards. There is no perfect solution, and every path forward requires a different kind of commitment. Whether the Cowboys decide to pursue a major trade, make a smaller strategic move, or stand firm and rely on the draft, each option will shape the identity of the team moving forward. The decisions made during this period are not just about filling gaps on the roster, but about defining the direction of the franchise in a highly competitive environment where every advantage matters and every mistake can be costly. As the offseason moves forward, another important aspect to consider is how the coaching staff plans to adjust the defensive scheme for the upcoming season. Sometimes a team does not need a blockbuster trade or a major roster overhaul, but instead small adjustments in positioning, play calling, and player roles can make a significant difference. If the Cowboys believe they can generate more pressure through scheme variations, blitz packages, and better rotation on the defensive line, they may feel less urgency to trade valuable assets for another pass rusher. Coaching adjustments often go unnoticed compared to big player moves, but they can have a major impact over the course of a season. There is also the factor of player development, which is something every successful organization relies on. Young players who were drafted in previous seasons are expected to take the next step, and internal improvement is often the most cost-effective way to strengthen a roster. If even 2 or 3 young defenders improve significantly, the entire defense could look completely different without the team needing to make a major trade. This is why teams spend so much time evaluating not only external talent, but also their own roster, trying to project which players are ready to handle bigger roles and more responsibility. Another element that cannot be ignored is the pressure from the fan base and the overall expectations surrounding the team. The Cowboys are always one of the most discussed teams, and every offseason move becomes a major topic of conversation. When expectations are high, there is always a temptation to make a big move to show that the team is serious about competing. However, smart organizations do not make decisions based on pressure or public opinion. They make decisions based on long-term planning, roster balance, and financial flexibility. The challenge is finding the balance between being aggressive enough to improve and being patient enough to avoid costly mistakes. The draft itself will also play a huge role in determining whether a trade becomes more or less likely. If the Cowboys believe the draft class is deep at certain positions, they may prefer to keep their picks and select younger, cheaper players who can develop over time. On the other hand, if they believe there is a specific player available through trade who is significantly better than the prospect in the draft, that could push them toward making a deal. This constant comparison between proven players and draft prospects is one of the most difficult parts of roster management because it involves projecting future performance versus trusting current production. As the weeks go by and more information becomes available, the picture will become clearer regarding what direction the Cowboys might take. Trade rumors will continue, new names will appear in discussions, and the team will evaluate every possible scenario to improve the roster. Whether they make a big move, a small move, or no move at all, the important thing is that every decision fits into a larger plan for the team's future because in the end, building a successful team is not about one single move, but about a series of smart decisions made over time. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Dallas Cowboys, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. We always look forward to your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.